Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to another brand new If I Had Written episode. And in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the highly anticipated Spider-Man 8. Now, If I Had Written is a series where I do pre-writes, rewrites, and write canceled projects within the world of pop culture. It's a very interesting series. I'm getting a lot more requests to do so many different things, and I've been seeing it everywhere. And I hear you out. I hear what you would like to see. So that being said, if you guys are new around here and would like to see more If I Had Written content, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on. I would also highly recommend that you comment down below what your thoughts were about this particular storyline, because I will feature you in the breakdown series that is on this channel. So if you would like to get a feature, do make sure to listen closely, get those questions ready, and fire away, as I will have you on the channel. But again, let's dive right into the highly anticipated If I Had Written Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 8. One would think that because of Peter's good deeds in his city, that they would never turn on him. But the reverse was the case. Due to Kraven parading the city in his costume, the public believed that Spider-Man was a criminal again. Even though lots of news companies had spotted how the evil Spider-Man did not use webs and how he looked bulkier in the suit, the people were having none of it. Peter just concluded that no matter how much good he did, there would still be people that disliked him. The conclusion and realization of this truth gave Peter some comfort, but it was not enough. Peter needed some stability. His parade throughout the city was like walking through hell. Peter had literally gone to rescue a woman from being mugged in the alleyway by a man, but they both turned on him. The woman literally shouted at Peter not to kill the man or break his knees, and when Peter tried to explain that the former Spider-Man was someone else, she thought that his hand gestures meant that he wanted to harm her, and she passed out. The robber, who had literally peed his pants, scurried away, and Peter was left with battered emotions. Even though Peter knew that his reputation was scaring criminals, he hated that. Even the people that he was protecting saw him as a villain. Even the cops were now against him again, and Peter was sick of the whole thing. The whole experience was getting too overwhelming for him. This was why Peter just knew what to do. When everything and everyone rejected Peter, he always had one safe place to go: home. What made his home a safe place was not the building, but a particular woman. It made no sense to Peter that MJ was still a human being, because to him, she was an angel. To Peter, Mary Jane was heaven. This was why Peter was currently swinging towards his house. He just wanted to go and lay on MJ's knees. One of those few places where he was loved unconditionally. Peter knew that it was one place where he would find stability, purpose, and the drive again. However, when Peter reached his home, he discovered that it was just a house, because MJ was not in it. Peter was literally hyperventilating when he discovered that Mary Jane was nowhere to be seen. This quickly attributed this to the numerous traumas he had gone when MJ had been kidnapped by the various villains in a bid to get his attention. Each time the situation got much worse and dangerous. Their escape also got narrow too, and the possibility that this could be another kidnapping scenario. It was starting to frighten Peter. Peter quickly scanned the numerous villains in his head, and the obvious person was Kraven. This was because the other villains he had faced were either dead or imprisoned. Peter swore under his breath that he would not forgive Kraven if he was involved in this. Peter then realized that it could be another villain that he had not gotten in contact with before, and this scared him. Spider-Man was a vulnerable person in a vulnerable position, and this would be the optimal time for his enemies to strike. Peter would not be surprised if they also knew his secret identity, because over the past months, quite a handful of people had seen his face. While Peter cracked his head thinking of the possible scenarios of what could have happened to Mary Jane, his eyes quickly spotted his cell phone, and he slapped his hand on his head. He could have just easily called her. Peter quickly shot a web towards the phone and snagged it towards him. After this, he quickly dialed and called Mary Jane, while his heart skipped a beat. However, Peter discovered something dreadful when he heard a familiar tone coming from the couch. Mary Jane had not carried her phone with her. This discovery wanted to cause more panic, but he decided to call Aunt May, first to check if Mary Jane was with her. However, while Peter was still about to dial her number, he heard the jingle of keys, and his heart skipped. Peter literally flew to the door, and when the doorknob turned, he was already there, face to face with MJ. MJ was quite surprised to see Peter and asked him what he was doing at home so early. Peter, on the other hand, was not in for the change of topic. Peter quickly asked Mary Jane where she went, and instantly, he could see that his tone hurt her. Peter was not that interested in her feelings now. He just wanted to know if she was okay. Mary Jane then entered the house and told Peter that she had started auditioning for roles in the theater again, and he was in shock. Peter then asked her why she needed to get a job, because Bernard had given them a lot of money from the sale of Oscorp. Mary Jane, however, explained to Peter that the money was not the issue. MJ told Peter that she wanted to have a career on her own. She did not want to be some housewife. She wanted to be a working class woman. Peter was still not getting the point, and he snapped at MJ. He asked her who will take care of the house, and most importantly, him. His words and tone obviously hurt Mary Jane, and she snapped too. She told Peter that since they met, she had been living for him. Now that they were married, she also wanted to get a life. After this, she walked out on him into their room and slammed the door. It was at this moment that Peter knew that this was serious. He was in trouble. An already distraught and depressed Peter became more depressed, and his emotions more shaken by this new development. This was because he knew that Mary Jane would not be available for him to get more stability again. The funny thing was that Peter knew that MJ had a point, but the fact that he still wanted her all to himself made him feel selfish. The feeling made Peter feel more bad and depressed about himself. That night, when Peter slept, even though MJ was around, the house did not feel like home. Location? Kingpin's mansion. Kingpin was in a bad mood, and his guards knew it. They knew that if they crossed him, they would get their backs broken and find themselves jobless. When he was in this mood, only a few people or things could calm him down. One of those things was a solution to his problem, and it was on his way. One of his henchmen approached him, and the others were terrified of what might befall of him on behalf. However, he bore good news, so that meant he was safe. The henchmen told Kingpin that they had been able to contact the necessary candidates, and his mood suddenly changed. He quickly told the carrier the information to quickly arrange a meeting. He then quickly reminded them that he wanted to remain anonymous for now. His henchmen quickly understood and started setting up a voice distorter and a blank screen to hide his identity. Kingpin knew that this was a crucial stage in a more crucial matter, and he did not want anything to impede it. He drove this point to his henchmen by slamming his fist on the desk and screaming that he did not want any hitches. His terrified men got the point and quickly got to work. Finally, he would get his hands on the symbiote, Kingpin said in his mind. He had been planning to get it ever since, but a lot of problems had arisen. One of them had been its location, but his men had figured it out. The symbiote was at Connors' former lab. A lot of ideas flowed through Kingpin's mind. about what he could use the symbiote for. He was familiar with the quote of absolute power, corruption, absolutely. But Kingpin was already rotten to the core. Kingpin knew that wielding the power of the symbiote would open doors to limitless possibilities, especially after seeing the fight between Venom and Spider-Man during the construction site. But one thing was for sure, he would get rid of Spider-Man once and for all. Unlike most of the city's citizens, Kingpin had never been a fan of Spider-Man. The reason was simple. The web crawler was bad for business. His constant crime fighting had caused a major decline in the profits of Wilson Fisk's various shadow enterprises, and he was sick of it. Spider-Man was even one of the major reasons that Kingpin set out on his journey of getting the symbiote, and now he had almost reached his goal. While Kingpin daydreamed about what he could accomplish with the symbiote, he received a tap on his shoulder from one of his henchmen, and this greatly infuriated him. In return for the tap, Kingpin gave the henchman a punch, and he was knocked out in an instant. When he woke up, Kingpin knew that he would learn two very important things. One would be not to interrupt the boss, and the second would be to know how to chew food with a lot of missing teeth. When the other henchmen saw what had befallen their comrade, they then stayed far away from their boss and conveyed the message that the knocked out fellow was supposed to tell Kingpin that everything was set and the meeting could proceed. Kingpin then stood from his chair and proceeded to the meeting room. When he sat down, he confirmed that he was still anonymous, and when they responded in the affirmative, he told them to go on and call the agent. The agent was Black Cat. She would be the one retrieving the symbiote from Dr. Connors' lab. The meeting was successful, and Kingpin had reached a deal with Black Cat. With any luck, he would be getting the symbiote very soon. However, immediately, the call with Black Cat ended. Kingpin was already on another call. Kingpin was now in a meeting with Adrian Toomes. Anonymously, too. If it was not as he doubted the expertise or skills of Black Cat, but Wilson Fisk was a man that did not want any mistakes or any slip-ups. This was why he was also contacting Vulture for the same job. He figured that if Black Cat could not pull it off, then Adrian would finish the job. Once he arranged a meeting with Vulture, he then ended the call on a very happy note. Soon the symbiote would be in my hands, and no one would be able to stop me, Kingpin said, while he laughed. He was going to be a very rich man, the richest of them all. Unlike other thieves and criminals, Felicia Hardy preferred stealth. She figured that she owed this trait to her father, since he basically taught her most of all that she knew. Black Cat knew that if she got into a confrontation with Connors or anyone in the lab, that the chances of a casualty would be very high. Granted, Black Cat knew that it would be most likely that she would incur the injury or casualty, but she did not want to take any chances. Her old man had taught her that. This was why she had been monitoring the lab, to the point that she knew when she could sneak in without any human contact. Black Cat swiftly checked her watch and saw that it was time. So, she moved into action. She was as swift and soundless as a cat, and it made her proud. The way she moved and penetrated the building was a work of art. When she retrieved that last little bit of the symbiote and made her way out of the building, she was actually quite taken aback. It can't be this easy, she said to herself. And funny enough, it was never meant to be. As she got outside the laboratory, she discovered that a particular bird was already waiting for her. The thing that this bird was her least favorite in the world, and he was literally grinding down on her. The Vulture looked at Black Cat in amusement, and she felt sick. Then he pointed at the flask containing the symbiote and said that it belonged to him. This took Black Cat aback, but she quickly figured it out. Her contractor had probably contacted both of them, or different people were after the symbiote. However, Black Cat believed that it was the former scenario because the timing was way too convenient, and her instincts never lied. Black Cat could only hope that more people were not on their way to get the symbiote, because Vulture was enough trouble on his own. Vulture also analyzed the situation and figured out that they would have to battle it out, because he doubted that Black Cat would be willing to let go of the symbiote without a fight. "I don't want to hurt you, honey, so why don't you just hand over the symbiote and go back home to your kittens," Vulture told Black Cat, while donning a nasty grin. Even though Black Cat had wanted to give the symbiote to Vulture, his statement would have spurred her to a fight. Without wasting any more time, she dashed at him, and Vulture signed as he flew out of her reach. "I tried to warn you," Vulture said, as he prepared to swoop in and continue the battle. The fight was on. The fight was still ongoing, and it was changing locations rapidly. This was due to Vulture throwing Black Cat around, even though the Vulture had an advantage because of his wings that Kingpin had given him. He had given Black Cat credit because she was surely no pushover. Felicia Hardy employed her acrobatic skills, and it made it difficult to keep up with her. The Vulture was barely dominating her, and that was due to his air advantage. As they fought throughout the city, something caught the Vulture's eyes, and he smiled as a sinister plan formed in his head. A fast train was approaching, and the Vulture had an idea of how to get rid of her. With a strong resolve, he quickly carried her and flew towards the train fast. Black Cat was too stunned to respond in time, and when she realized Vulture's endgame, it was too late. Location: the train. Peter had taken Mary Jane and Aunt May on a bonding trip, and they were currently on a train. Peter had spoken with Aunt May about the current situation at home, and she suggested the outing. Peter hoped that Aunt May would be able to resolve the issue. She had suggested that all they needed was some alone time together and communication, but Peter insisted that Aunt May come with them. He knew that he might be able to do it all by himself, but he didn't know. Hopefully, everything will go well, and the issue will be resolved. When this happened, Peter would be very happy because it meant that MJ would talk to him once more. Ever since the argument, MJ had given him the silent treatment, and it was killing Peter. For the last few days when he went out to safeguard the city and his citizens, he was met with hate. When he came back, he was still met with no love. This did not do any favors for Peter's mental health. Looking up, Peter prayed to the sky that today went very well. Shockingly, the sky responded, but it was not a positive one, as he saw Vulture came barraging down with Black Cat in his grasp. Peter was confused and didn't know what to do. Black Cat knew if Vulture succeeded in driving her through the train, she would surely die. This meant that she had to think very fast. Black Cat knew that if she had to sacrifice the symbiote for her life, she made the decision in a split second. Cat threw the cylinder holding the swirling symbiote up, and Vulture instantly caught it. This made him lose his focus, and Black Cat, using her acrobatic skills, threw herself with all of her weight in the opposite direction. This was a very smart move, and its result was instantaneous. Due to Black Cat's move and fast thinking, Vulture was now flying headfirst into the moving train. However, he quickly twisted and used his wings to protect him and the symbiote from harm, as the collision was inevitable. Black Cat, on the other hand, freed herself from the grasp of Vulture, but it also meant that she was free-falling now. She quickly adapted by latching onto the nearby pole, and like a cat, she landed on her feet. However, immediately Black Cat landed, she felt a sharp pain shoot up her right leg, But she could not be distracted. She quickly started moving towards the train while gritting her teeth in pain as Vulture crashed into it. It was quite a ghastly sight, and from what Black Cat saw, several people were dead and more injured. However, none of the victims were the Vulture, and it made her mad. With more resolve, she continued moving towards the train because she had to get the symbiote and claim the prize. Parker still felt the ringing in his ears from the crash, but as soon as he got his bearings back, he scanned both Mary Jane and Aunt May to ensure that they were safe first. Only MJ was bruised at the forehead because of the collision with the chair in front of her, but apart from that, they were pretty much intact. After making sure of that, Peter then scanned his surroundings and the other passengers, and what he saw made him sick. The sight was too bloodied. Most of the passengers were safe, but others were either dead or badly injured. Peter then told MJ and Aunt May to get to safety and call the ambulance while he went to suit up. They didn't even argue as he pulled them to their feet and they set them on their way. He knew that they were still in shock, and he could not blame them because he was in a much bigger shock. The Vulture stood up drowsy and dusted off the metal scrapes on him. While he did that, he noticed stains of blood on his wings, and he instantly knew what had happened. However, he had no time for regrets and instantly checked the cylinder containing the symbiote. He heaved a sign of relief that it was still intact. From a distance, he spotted Black Cat limping towards him, and he was amused. He admired her resolve, but he had to admit that she was quite stupid for still coming up to him in her condition. The Vulture then decided that he would spare her for now, because he too was in no condition for another fight, and he had started hearing sirens. With a mock wave to bid farewell to Black Cat, the Vulture quickly took off to the air, but something held him back. When he pinpointed the issue, he was almost unsurprised to see that it was a web. Spider-Man was now present at the scene, and it vexed Vulture. The Vulture knew that he had to make short work of Spider-Man, and he had to do it fast. He could not afford to let the cops surround him. Thankfully, Vulture knew Spider-Man was a hero, and heroes all had one weakness: the people. Fortunately, there was a lot of them around. The Vulture immediately landed and picked up a sharp metal scrap from the train. He then tossed it at a random civilian, and Peter quickly dashed to save the person. Fortunately for the person and Peter, he made it on time and stopped it from piercing the civilian's heart. Unfortunately though, the Vulture used this opportunity to strike. Using the web that was still attached to him and connected to Spider-Man, he instantly pulled the web crawler towards him. It was so instantaneous, and Peter's spider sense went haywire. The Vulture was already waiting for him with a metal rod, and if not for this, his spider sense and quick reflexes, his skull would probably be bashed into smithereens. However, Peter twisted, and the rod met with his gut at full force. Spider-Man immediately got blinded by pain and anguish, so much so that he did not even notice when Vulture snipped the web attaching them and flew away with the symbiote. When Peter finally got his senses, he discovered that he was surrounded by cops, and they all had their guns pointed at him. Peter tried explaining, but a moment from him made one of the cops shoot. Peter was literally stunned. Thankfully, he was able to dodge the bullet, but his feelings had been hurt again. As if the police standing against him were not enough, the crowd started rallying against him. They started shouting out chants about why he came late and failed to save the rest of the passengers. They also blamed him for letting the Vulture escape. The entire ordeal was too much for Peter to bear, and quickly snagged most of the cops' guns and swung away. Tears were literally forming under his mask, but he was also swinging. Something in a not too distant alleyway caught his attention. A woman dressed in a black suit and a mask was slumped against the wall. Peter had noticed her faintly during the battle, and he had been rushed to tackle the Vulture. Now Peter saw that she was literally in a pool of blood, and he knew that he had to help her either way. Either that she would die, or Peter would quickly swoop in, and he did. He carried her off to somewhere safe, and where she could get some treatment. When she woke up, Peter knew that she had a lot to tell him. Location: Vulture's hideout. The Vulture was victorious, and he was grinning from ear to ear. However, he was now pacing up and down while he waited for Kingpin to contact him in order to know the location for the delivery. The Vulture could literally feel the cash in his fingertips. To be honest, he was a bit unsure about the whole anonymous contractor, but somehow he knew that he was the real deal. As Adrian continued prancing about in his hideout, his screen immediately lit up, and he rushed towards it. It was an incoming call for the symbiote contractor. The Vulture had already sent pictures of the symbiote as proof that he had it, so what he expected now was the site for delivery. However, this was not the case, and it enraged him. The distorted voice told him that there had been a slight change of plans, and Vulture was displeased. The distorted voice tried to calm him down and explained things to him. It stated that the clip of him beating Spider-Man had been viewed, and it impressed him. The new deal was now that he eliminated Spider-Man. The Vulture's brows fluttered when he heard the new deal. He then casted his eyes at the symbiote swirling inside and told the contractor that there was nothing actually stopping him from selling the symbiote to another person. This actually caused the distorted voice to laugh. It then stated that if the Vulture killed Spider-Man, that he would be paid triple the initial sum he was supposed to get for the symbiote. This greatly interested the Vulture as he smiled, and he told the voice to give him some time to think. Peter knew that if he had taken Black Cat to the hospital, that they might be reluctant to treat her because of her suspicious wounds and suit. So instead, Peter had carried her to a friend of his who owed him big time. However, Peter would not lie. He had seen the real identity of Black Cat. Now, he was at Aunt May's house. He had directed MJ to go there in case Vulture knew his real identity. Peter was taking no chances and could not afford to lose Mary Jane again. When Peter arrived at the house, he immediately made sure that they were okay. MJ was now wearing a bandage on her bruised head after some inquiries. They told Peter that they went to the hospital. Peter was then relieved, but something did not feel quite right. Peter could not pinpoint it, but he knew something was off. MJ was oddly quiet, and Aunt May had a glint in her eye. When the silence and subtle tension became unbearable, Peter could not take it anymore. He immediately blurted out a question asking what was happening or what had happened. MJ then looked at Peter with an unsure eye and told him the truth. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. But to Peter it sounded like a supersonic scream as he momentarily lost his bearings. Peter's knees buckled and he almost fell down. Peter then looked at Aunt May for some confirmation, and she nodded her head to show that it was true. Peter was beyond shocked, and he could not take it. This was the reason he dashed out of the room and started heading upstairs. Aunt May and Mary Jane looked a bit surprised at his actions, but they expected it because they were shocked too. MJ knew that Peter would take it hard, especially because she and Aunt May had almost lost their lives in the train crash. Aunt May looked at her with raised eyebrows, and she knew exactly what she was saying. MJ had this strange connection with May. She was always able to read her mind and words from her facial expressions. Right now, Aunt May's raised eyebrows meant that she should go and get her tiger, Peter. MJ signed, but in the end she dragged herself from the couch and started moving upstairs too. She had a good idea where Peter was, and she was not wrong. She found Peter on the rooftop, looking down at the city. It was a habit of his that she found cute, and looking at him now made her giggle in amusement, in spite of the mood. Her giggle caught Peter's attention, and he was confused. He waited for her to approach him and sat down before he questioned why she laughed. When he did, the question amused Mary Jane more. She then asked Peter if he remembered the marriage vow that they took, for better or for worse. Peter said that he remembered, but he still did not understand. MJ then explained that she remembered it clearly now, and that in their earlier fight had been immature. She then went on to cite various of their confessions to each other, and Peter began to see. They had promised to love each other forever, no matter what, but a minor thing wouldn't threaten their relationship. MJ then laughed in excitement as she saw that Peter had finally gotten it. She then held his hand and confessed to him that as long as a world threat disasters could not separate them, that no family argument would either. Peter could not believe his ears, but MJ went on and told him that they could actually come to a consensus, and that would settle everything. Peter nodded his head and told her it would wait. It was now MJ's turn to be confused, and she asked Peter to clear the air. Peter told her that he was actually very angry at himself, because he would have lost 3 of the most important people in his life. He told MJ that he could not even imagine losing both her and the unborn baby. He further went on to state that it was quite frightening that even though his unborn child was under the threat of destruction and death because he was Spider-Man. It was as if Mary Jane had predicted, and this was why she loved Peter. But it was also his greatest weakness. He also blamed himself. She guessed that it was his default belief to save everyone, but sadly, she knew that it was not possible. As always, MJ started to comfort Peter. She told him that whether there was a Spider-Man or not, that this new Vulture guy would have crashed into the train and those people would have been killed. She continued by telling Peter that him being Spider-Man helped to mitigate the damage, and this helped lighten Peter's mood. However, Peter quickly scolded and said that he had already decided, and when MJ asked what he decided, she obliged her. You're traveling out of the state with Aunt May for the safety of yourself and our unborn child. At least till after this conflict is resolved, he said. Peter said it with such a final decision in his voice that MJ could not even argue. Another reason was that she also thought that it was a good idea to get away from all the chaos. Peter and MJ began holding hands in the starry night together. Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, had told the contractor that he would think about the offer, but there was not much to think about actually. The Vulture needed the money, but he just wanted to be sure that he was making the right decision. He left his office and went to where his boys were building high-tech weapons. Adrian actually had a life before diving into crime. He had been an employee at Oscorp facilities and had been making an honest living. His wife and daughter were happy, but everything changed when Spider-Man came into the picture. After Spider-Man's actions had led the death of Green Goblin and subsequently Harry Osborn, the company's finances greatly dwindled, and it had to let some people go. Adrian Toombs and most of his men were among them. However, as a last resort, they had stolen several high-tech weapons and resources from the company before they left. It was from these weapons and resources that they had created the Vulture's suit and other equipment that was actually given and funded by Kingpin, also known as the anonymous contractor. They utilized them greatly to earn a living, and Vulture ensured that none of their family would ever be hungry again. To them, he was their god. Even though at the beginning Adrian Toombs had a consciousness, he also lost it. His operations at the beginning were just stealing and selling, but they slowly turned to more different acts, and Vulture's heart became hardened. His justification was that he was doing it for their family, for all of their families. Even though he had killed some people, they had just happened as casualties of an operation and not necessarily an assassination. This was why the contractor's offer was quite different, and he decided that he had to think about it. Adrian thought about the morality of the job, and that quite amused him. Right now, he was thinking about whether it was something his family would be proud to hear that he did. However, he quickly discarded it, as he knew that they would be disgusted and disappointed about everything he had done to provide for them. But some things had to just be done. It was business. For the greater good, sacrifices must be made, was his best quote. Sacrifices. The word was ringing in Adrian Toombs' mind. He had sacrificed a lot, and all of them because of Spider-Man. Adrian figured that he would still have been living a smooth and crimeless life without the existence of Spider-Man, and because of this, he concluded that it was justified in his actions. After deciding to accept the offer, Toombs swiftly made his way to his office to accept the deal. He had made a lot of sacrifices for Spider-Man. Now, it was the web-slinger's turn to sacrifice something of his. It was time for Spider-Man to sacrifice his life. Location: the airport. Peter was bidding farewell to both Aunt May and Mary Jane. He had insisted that he followed them to the airport to ensure their safety. If it wasn't being too overwhelming, he would have tagged along in the plane, but he knew that he could not allow it. When Aunt May had suggested that they use the train instead, Peter had instantly rejected the idea. He figured that it would take a lot of time before he entered a train again, because quite frankly he had a history with them. After seeing them off and much crying, which came mostly from him, he decided to head back home. His heart was literally in the air with them, and would only come down when he heard that they landed safely, but some other surprises was waiting for him. The surprise would literally take his mind from MJ and Aunt May. When Peter got home that morning to watch the news, and had breakfast like an average American, he got the shock of his life, and it came in the form of Vulture. When he had accepted the job, Adrian could sense the happiness in the contractor's voice. However, when the contractor asked how he planned to do it, Adrian just smiled and told him to not bother and just watch. The Vulture then ended the call and instructed his men to gather together. After that they had assembled, he told them their new assignment, and they were shocked. They too also asked him what the contractor asked him. They asked how he planned to achieve the goal and complete the job, but he just laughed. He told them that he would let them in on one little secret. Adrian told them that all heroes have one big weakness, and that is the people that they protect. After saying this, Adrian told them the plan. He would capture a large number of civilians and hold them hostage. After this, they would do a broadcast to challenge Spider-Man to come and save them. The Vulture told them that the broadcast would be nationwide to ensure that Spider-Man won't miss it. After this, they would wait till the web-slinger came around to rescue the civilians, and then they would strike and destroy him. His men were impressed, and Adrian could tell. Why weren't they? He was a genius, and that was why he had gotten this far. However, one of his men asked a question, and this cast a doubt in the minds of the others. It even made the Vulture rethink for a moment, but he brushed it off. The question was whether Spider-Man would show up, considering that the city and the cops had been very hostile towards him. Vulture looked worried for a moment, but then he brushed the question aside. He told them that Spider-Man would show up. He knew the type of person that Spider-Man was. He was there on Christmas Eve, after the defeat of Hobgoblin, and he was in the crowd. He knows what Spider-Man would do, and what he's capable of. He likes to save everyone. He would show up, Vulture said, with an air of confidence, and this transpired the same in his men. They were now radiating with boldness that the operation would seemingly be as possible. They would be rich beyond their wildest imaginations. The same night, Vulture had called the contractor for a favor. He wanted access to a huge infrastructure that could house a large amount of people. When he was questioned about what he wanted to use the building for, he evaded the question. He just told the contractor to provide the infrastructure and leave the rest to him. He got a positive answer and knew that his plan was now set. Spider-Man would be brought down once and for all. The Vulture had sent his men to capture random people, but more women and children to invoke more emotions. After this, he sent a nationwide broadcast and got off the air. Immediately, he sent the message, and he was contacted by his contractor. As expected, the contractor was very impressed. He told Vulture that his plan was ingenious and very unexpected. Vulture already knew this, so he cut the call short. He told the contractor not to worry, because he would soon get what he needed. After this, he ended the call and started making security checks to ensure that everything was in order. Spider-Man would never know what hit him. Location: Black Cat's recovery room. Immediately, Peter had watched the news. He saw the broadcast of Vulture and his challenge, and he was in total shock. Spider-Man felt that something was up and he needed to get the information that he needed. The first thing that came into his mind was going swinging headfirst into the hostage camp to rescue the people, but he knew that several things could go wrong. He was not invincible. Spider-Man was boiling with rage to the point that he forgot that he was even trying to save the same people that had hated him over the past few weeks. Peter then decided to calm down, as he figured that his rage would not do him any good. He then started trying to figure out ways to solve his predicament, and luckily enough, he found one. Peter remembered that the Vulture and Black Cat were fighting over something, so he concluded that he just needed to ask Black Cat to fill him up with the information. After saving her life, Peter had not really paid a visit to Black Cat, but he was getting updates about her condition and he knew she was almost recovered. He figured that she was a really fast healer. Because of the threats of Vulture and his need for vital information, Spider-Man was now currently in Black Cat's room, demanding information. She was a little shocked as he appeared from her window, fully clad in his attire, but her expression quickly vanished. It was as if she expected his arrival. Peter asked her to tell him what Black Cat and the Vulture were struggling with and why. Without any struggle, mostly due to her guilty consciousness, the Black Cat began spilling the beans. She told Spider-Man about the contractor. She stated that the contractor wanted her to steal the Venom symbiote for a huge sum of money. Peter figured that the story checked out because he saw the Vulture holding the swirling symbiote. As he remembered it, shivers went down his spine, as he remembered the tragic moment that he had suffered because of the symbiote. As flashbacks began to ring in from the events of the church bell to Venom to everything else, Spider-Man quickly nodded and told her to continue the tale. He asked her how she'd gotten into a fight with the Vulture then. Cat then responded that Vulture was also hired by someone who she believed to be the same contractor to retrieve the symbiote. This shocked Peter, but it also made a lot of sense, as he could finally arrange the jigsaw puzzle in his head. Peter didn't understand one thing though. Connors and Peter were the only ones that ever knew there was a second piece of symbiote. So how did this information ever get out to the public? Peter then asked the Black Cat if she knew of the new development, Vulture kidnapping hostages, in order to lure him. Cat nodded her head. She told Peter that when she saw the broadcast message, she knew that he was going to come. This was the reason she was not surprised. Black Cat then told Peter that she had a hypothesis, but her instinct was telling her that it was the truth and the truth never lies. Peter's interest was piqued, and he asked it to her. Black Cat told Peter that Vulture had been hired again to kill him. This shocked Spider-Man, but Black Cat said that it was just a hunch. She told Peter that this was why it would not be advisable for him to go alone and face the Vulture, because he would be heavily outmatched and outnumbered. They would have taken a lot of countermeasures, taking in the fact that they knew Spider-Man and his style of combat. Peter nodded his head and stated that she was making sense, but he then inquired what he should do. "What should I do?" Spider-Man asked her, confused, and the response that Black Cat gave him made him more perplexed. "Not you, but we," she said. When she saw Peter was confused, she told him that she was coming too. Peter immediately told her that could not be possible because she was still recovering. He also informed her that he still did not trust her, because she could be tagging along to steal the symbiote again. However, Black Cat countered every one of his points. She told Spider-Man that when she saw those people die because of her and the Vulture, her heart broke. Unlike Vulture and other villains, she was just a thief and did not like to take human life. So seeing multiple people dead like that was heart-wrenching for her. She also told Peter that she owes her life to him, and she was happy to repay him. When Peter heard Black Cat, something inside of him knew that she was saying the truth. It was not logical, but he believed her. Spider-Man was all about giving people second chances, and he was about to give one to Black Cat now. However, Peter discovered one problem. Even though Black Cat was on his team, they were still pretty much outmatched because she was still recovering. Peter would need someone who could track and easily take Vulture's weapons and defense mechanisms down. Peter needed a hunter. Location: the forest. Peter quickly told his plan to Black Cat. She did not really understand why Spider-Man was going after a man that tried to kidnap his wife, successfully kidnapped him, and stolen his identity, and went ahead to destroy his reputation by committing various crimes and also tried to harm his wife again. Spider-Man told Black Cat that he did not know the reason why too, but he felt like their destinies were intertwined, and he was also the right man for the job. Black Cat then asked Spider-Man what they would offer Kraven in return for his services when they saw him, and he was totally blank. He just told her the same way she trusted her instincts so much was the same trust his gut had. Black Cat then signed a defeat and agreed to follow him to contact the so-called hunter. However, the only problem that Black Cat did not think of was the one that they were experiencing now. Peter had no idea of where to find Kraven. Black Cat thought that he knew his hideout all along. When he confirmed that he did not know, she immediately smacked her head in frustration. Spider-Man was weird and less wiser than she actually envisioned him to be. Spider-Man, however, was not fazed. He said that he remembered vaguely where Kraven had tied him up, and with some luck, they could locate it again. With some extra luck, his hideout would still be there. With a whole truckload of luck, he would be around. Black Cat instantly added that it would even take an entire ocean of luck to convince him to join them to take down Vulture and free the hostages. Peter frowned at that. While they continued walking, Black Cat calculated that their probability of meeting Kraven was very slim, and it would be very disastrous, especially to the hostages if they had wasted all of this time for nothing. "I know what you're thinking," Spider-Man told her as he walked up front as he tried to locate where he had been held captive by Kraven. "Don't worry, everything would work out well," he said. Black Cat wanted to believe him, but she wanted to say something, and Peter cut her off. "We are here," he said. Even though Peter would love to boast that he found Kraven, Black Cat would disagree because it felt that the hunter had found them and led them to his lair. He then rudely asked them why they had come to see him. With a twinkle in his eyes and amusement in his lips, he asked Spider-Man if he had come for a rematch. Peter replied in the negative. He asked Craven if he did not know what was happening in the outside world, beyond the forest. The hunter shook his head and told Peter that he did not have any means of communication to the outside world, and he preferred to keep it that way because they were all distractions. Peter then filled him in on what was going on, and Craven listened. When he was done, Craven asked Peter why he had come to meet him, because he could have been plotting with the cops on how to save the hostages. Peter winced at his statement and told Craven that because of his actions, the cops hated him. Craven then laughed manically at that. Peter then told Craven that they needed his skills to infiltrate the hostages camp and subsequently defeat the Vulture. Craven was a little bit taken aback by this, but Black Cat felt that something was off. "Okay, since you want my help, what are you willing to give me in exchange?" Craven asked Spider-Man. Peter told him that if Craven helped him, he would forgive him for his earlier crimes, and this made the hunter scowl. The scowl expectedly changed to a loud laughter, and this made Spider-Man look stupid. Craven told him that he did not need his forgiveness, and that if Peter did not have anything reasonable to offer him, that he should take off and leave. This shattered Peter's hopes because all his plans had Craven involved in them. Peter wanted to team up with Black Cat and round Craven up there, but he knew that it wouldn't contribute anything towards the saving of the hostages. He also knew that both him and Black Cat could suffer devastating injuries while trying to capture him, and they were in his territory. So there was not telling what kind of surprises he could spring forth. This was why Peter decided to retreat. He told Craven that it was no problem, that he and Black Cat would find another way. Once they left his lair, Black Cat asked Spider-Man for what the other way he was talking about, and he said that he was just bluffing. Peter told Black Cat that he was currently void of any ideas. When she further asked him what they were going to do now, he told her that they would go back to the city, sleep, and then think about their dreams. Hopefully by morning we would be able to come up with something, Peter said, as he realized that tomorrow was the deadline. "I just pray that a miracle happens," Spider-Man said under his breath. When Spider-Man woke up the next day, Craven was in his room, staring at him while he slept. This experience did not do any favors for Peter's mental health, as he screamed out of his lungs while he jumped and perched on his room wall. Peter then assumed an attacking stance and demanded what Craven was doing in his room. When Craven did not answer, Spider-Man further went on to threaten him, and this finally got an expression out of him. Craven bursted out in laughter. Anyone would laugh their hearts out if they saw an adult clad in only underwear threatening him too. After Craven had caught his breath, he told Peter that he had thought about it, and that he would join them to bring down Vulture. When Peter asked him the reason he changed his mind, Craven told him that he had already decided to join them from the beginning, but he wanted to be dramatic. He told Peter that he even had a gift for him, the blueprints of the hostages, the building layout. Peter gasped in shock and asked him how he got it, but Craven would not budge. He then told Peter Parker that if he joined him in taking Vulture down, he was not doing it for free. When Peter asked him what he wanted, he laughed again. "Don't worry, when I get it, you'll know," Craven told Peter. And for some reason, the statement unsettled him. However, Peter knew that there was no turning back now. He had to rescue the hostages today, or they would all die. The news channels and the newspapers had already started going frantic, with the headlines that Spider-Man had finally given up on the city, and that the hostages would die because he was nowhere to be found. They were all in for a nasty surprise. Peter had called Black Cat and they were over the plan with Craven. Craven would go first inside to infiltrate the security cameras and other defense mechanisms, since he had studied the blueprints more than them. After he gave them the signal, Black Cat would then sneak inside and lead the hostages out of the tunnel after taking care of the guards. Peter would then go straight to face Vulture and settle things once and for all. After deciding what to do, they set out on their mission and everything went almost according to plan. The only hitches that they were having were the guards. They had underestimated Vulture's men, and they had weapons. Kraven got into the building just fine, but Black Cat had a much difficult time, and her injury made everything worse. Peter had to abandon the plan to lend a hand to her. They teamed up and started taking the guards out one after another. Black Cat suspected something fishy. There was no way that they would be able to do this with this many guards protecting the hostages. It was almost as if someone was directing all of the guards to their location. After some athletic play and a lot of bruises and webs, they were finally able to suppress Vulture's henchmen. Black Cat then proceeded to guide the hostages out of the building. While she did, she passed through the camera monitoring room, and it confirmed her hunches. Kraven had taken care of the cameras except the ones in the hostage area. Kraven wanted them to get caught. No, Black Cat realized he wanted to keep them occupied. This discovery made her run back to warn Peter. She hoped that she was not too late. When she reached Vulture's office, she discovered that it was too late for him. The Vulture was dead. Spider-Man was standing there with a note in his hand. He told her that he just found the Vulture like this, and she believed him. This was clearly Kraven's work. Black Cat knew that she would have trusted her instincts from the beginning, but there was nothing she could do about it now. She then remembered the note and got curious. When she asked Peter what the note said, he gave it to her. The note that Kraven left read that he had collected his price. When they searched Vulture's room, they discovered that the Venom symbiote was gone. Location: Kingpin's mansion. Kraven was now inside Kingpin's mansion with the symbiote. When Kraven revealed himself to him, he asked why he was not surprised that he was the independent contractor, but Kraven said that he had already figured things out. Kingpin was amused and asked him how much he had figured out. Kraven told the boss that he knew he hired 3 people for the job of capturing the symbiote. He was actually at the lab, but when he saw Vulture appear to subsequently fight Black Cat for the symbiote, he wanted to sit it out. When Vulture had won, he was already waiting for his office to eliminate the Vulture and claim the money. But when he heard the new deal, his interest was piqued. Immediately, Kraven heard that the contractor wanted Spider-Man dead. He contacted him and made him an offer of his own. He would deliver the symbiote and destroy Spider-Man as well. And Vulture too, for the initial sum of money. This deal had gotten Kingpin really interested, because he could get all he wanted for less than the amount. This was why when Kraven demanded for the blueprints of the building, that Kingpin gave it to Vulture to use it to capture the hostages. He did not hesitate to give it to him. Kingpin laughed. He did not look much, but he definitely earned the title of the Ultimate Hunter, because he was very smart and wise. Kingpin, however, pointed out to Kraven that even though he had delivered the symbiote and made sure that Vulture was dead, Spider-Man was still alive. Because of this, Kingpin wanted to withhold the money from Kraven. Kraven told him that he did not care much about the money. He was more interested in the hunt. Kingpin got upset at this piece of information, as he wanted to use the money as an incentive in order for Kraven to complete the mission. "I never told you that I would kill Spider-Man," Kraven said to Kingpin. He reminded the boss that his exact words were that he would destroy Spider-Man. "How do you expect to do that?" Kingpin asked, infuriated. His henchmen noticed the shift in the air, and they knew that Kraven was walking on very thin ice. Any misstep and he would be going missing, literally. Kraven, however, was unfazed. With what was a madman's confidence, Kraven approached Kingpin and smirked. How would you like to know the real identity of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man?" he said. And that is going to be If I Had Written Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 8. Now, I think we all know at this point that Sam Raimi would probably never do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. But again, this has been an incredible journey, diving into the Raimiverse, making all these characters and storylines, and really showing like what's going to happen. And I think this particular storyline really showcases a lot more tension and action rather than, you know, the focus point of emotions. And I really wanted to add in the team up between Kraven, Black Cat, and Spider-Man, and what's going to happen now, because Vulture's dead. What's his family going to do? The symbiote's in this. What's going to happen in Spider-Man 9? We also have a lot of stuff, a lot of Easter eggs that are kind of going in Spider-Man 10, because that particular storyline with Carnage is really going to be insane. So what could happen with Kraven, and what's going to happen with Kingpin? Will Spider-Man get the symbiote once again? And if he does, what's he going to do? But that being said, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn those notifications on so you and your friends are all up to date with the latest content. I do want to say, if you guys would like to see these animated, I would highly recommend that you would go to the Patreon, because we're getting all these episodes animated. We're currently doing Spider-Man 4, we're going to be doing Maximum Carnage, we're also going to be doing like all of them, like we're doing so many of them. Amazing Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 4, and we're doing the original What Ifs that were going to be animated. We got a solid team now. We're finally going back to work on this. It's officially happening. Any dime really helps, so if you have anything, it really goes a long way. Even $10, $20, whatever you can contribute, I would highly recommend that you check it out. It's only if you want to, you don't have to, but I would highly recommend, if you want to see this stuff faster, it's gonna go a long way. But thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and have a fantastic day. Peace out.